Hello, my name's David Diley. I'm a filmmaker and underwater cinematographer from the UK. I'm currently on location in Australia filming a commercial for Panasonic for the Panasonic AU EVA1 cinema camera.
Moving silently through the water, you notice movement as the fish scatter to reveal that large, unmistakable shape. Sharks are my greatest passion. To share space with a shark is the greatest privilege you can have underwater.
Starting off, we're going to take a look at the gear that we're using. So as this is more along the lines of a documentary style shoot, we don't have lots of equipment for topside, for complex lighting setups, things like that. When you're traveling 10,000 miles to the other side of the world to do a shoot, you generally only want to be taking the bare essentials. And as this is focusing on the EVA1's abilities underwater, the vast majority of the gear that I have with me is to focus on its underwater use. So with that in mind, this is the pretty much the entirety of the shooting setup that we have on this table. So starting off, of course, with the camera, it's the Panasonic AU EVA1. We have two of those on set, and that is running into the Atomus Shogun Inferno. In the back of the Shogun Inferno, we're using the Angel Bird 4K RAW SSDs. We've probably shot about 95% of the content on those SSDs. The only time we've not used those is for shots that we needed to get when the others hadn't been offloaded, and the other SSDs we've been using are also Angel Bird. It's the AVXT Pros. Inside the EVA1 as well, two of each of the Angel Bird 128 gig SD cards also, so we're just using Angel Bird media for the entirety of the shoot. Taking a look at the lenses that I'm using on the shoot, for 99% of the shots that are going to be in the finished piece, maybe even 100%, it's all Sigma lenses. So on my A cam, I've been predominantly using the Sigma 8-16, and on the B cam, which Anita and Nick have been using, they have been using primarily the 14-24, also by Sigma. Now, we have been switching over. I generally tend to go with the slightly wider lens just because I'm getting up a little bit closer to the animals and giving them more option to actually move in closer towards me and for me to capture more of that in the frame. However, I have been shooting some of the stuff on the 14-24 myself, particularly of the sand tiger sharks down at Fish Rock, and I've been absolutely blown away by how sharp this 14-24 lens is. Now, the gears for this lens for the Nauticam housing are on their way out. They will be out soon, and I can certainly see myself definitely picking one of these up of my own, as these lenses are all on loan to me at the moment, but I have kind of fallen in love with that 14-24. The 8-16 has, I guess, kind of surprised me a little bit as well. It's been out for quite a while. It is on the more affordable end of the Sigma lenses, but it is really very, very good, very sharp. Both lenses are rectilinear, so you don't get much barrel distortion, if any, that I can tell at the edges of the image, and it just creates a really pleasing image when you combine them with the EVA1. For the top side, we've been shooting almost all of it on the Sigma 18-35 Cine lens, which is absolutely beautiful. It is at the more expensive end of the Sigma lenses, and you can see why. It's a T2.0, so you can really get a very shallow depth of field of it, and I was just, the first time I put it on the front of the camera, absolutely blown away. Just total love at first sight. It's an incredible lens. So of all these lenses, the 14-24, the 18-35 and the 8-16, I can see myself hopefully adding all of those into my own personal kit in the not too distant future. The only other lens that we've actually been using on the shoot that isn't a Sigma lens is the Samyang 85mm Cine Prime, which is on the camera that you're actually watching at the moment. I love that lens. It's great, really, really affordable, and I did shoot some stuff down at Byron Bay with it, which may or may not make it into the finished piece. So that's the lenses, Sigma 8-16, Sigma 18-35, and a Sigma 14-24. Fantastic, absolutely love every single one of them. So why did I choose the Panasonic AU EVA1 as my camera? To be honest, there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the first ones is Panasonic's colour science. When you're shooting underwater, obviously colour becomes a really big deal because you lose it very quickly. The deeper you go underwater, you start to lose all the warmer colours, so the reds and the oranges. And in terms of shooting cinematic images underwater, you really need a camera that is going to be able to handle the information that it's getting and be able to process that with as much colour and as much detail in there as possible. Panasonic are very widely known for their phenomenal colour science, and the EVA1 is absolutely no different. It really does, out of the box, look absolutely fantastic. So number one is the colour science. Number two is the flexibility of the image as well. So you can record anywhere up to 400 megabit all intra, or you can cut down and go to a long op codec at 150 megabits. There's also 100 megabits and 50 megabits options as well, and that's internal 10-bit with also 8-bit options as well. So you can actually get a broadcast quality image with a broadcast quality codec straight out of the camera's internal recording. It also shoots slow motion, so 4K up to 60p, but it will output up to 240 frames a second in 2K as well. So you can have super slow motion on there on a 2K image, which upscales incredibly well. And I've been going through the shoot here, shooting in various frame rates. So primarily 24 and 60, there's some 120 in there, and we're going to shoot some 240 frames stuff this evening as well. So that just that level of flexibility that the camera can actually provide is incredibly useful for shooting wildlife and capturing the action as it goes. The other side of it is that the internals of the camera, there's a lot of space in there, and Panasonic are doing regular firmware updates. So they're always looking to improve the options and to add options into what you actually have available inside the camera. So you know that at certain points of the year, there's going to be improvements and additions to the camera, which is fantastic when you're laying out the money on a camera that you are going to be using for a considerable period of time. It's good to know that there's a lot of flexibility in there for that camera to actually be improved upon over time. So that's a real bonus. And just in general, I find the image of the camera really pleasing on the eye. It's sharp, but it's not too sharp. As I mentioned already, it reads the color really well. It's a very strong codec, and I also work as a colorist, so I deal with a lot of stuff in post, and the internal codec actually handles being pushed very heavily in a grade extremely well, much better than a lot of its competitors. So you're getting a very strong, robust image straight out of the camera. Now, of course, you have the option to send that image out to the Shogun Inferno, which I'm a very big fan of, and everything we've been shooting underwater has been going through the Shogun Inferno also. So I'm going to look at some of the reasons now why I actually chose to use the Shogun Inferno as both a monitor and as a recorder. So what are the reasons why I chose to use the Atomos Shogun Inferno? Well, first of all, just as a monitor, it's absolutely superb. Very bright display. It's full HD. It has all the focus assist tools. It has all the exposure assist tools, and plus things like if you want to do shooting in crop lines in various aspect ratios, it gives you the option to have them as overlays, so you know that what you're shooting is actually going to be well framed. It gives false color, which I absolutely love. False color is one of my favorite exposure tools. I absolutely love it. So it has that. It has everything that you need to make sure that what you're shooting is both in focus and properly exposed. And that becomes even more important underwater as well, because you do lose light the deeper that you go. It is quite hard to focus, particularly on marine life, as it is moving and you don't know where it's going to move. You want to be sure that if you're manually focusing, which I do, that you're getting the shot in focus, because you may only get one chance at that. And the Inferno is so good that I would say that 99% of everything that I record onto it is perfectly in focus, and that is an absolute dream. It's a nice big display, it's easy to read, it's very bright, looks fantastic, and it's very accurate, which is an absolute joy. As a recorder, it's very flexible, and it pairs up with the EVA1 beautifully, because we have the options of the DNx HD and DNx HR codecs. We have the ProRes codecs from ProRes LT all the way up to ProRes HQ. We have Cinema DNG RAW, so the camera is outputting a Cinema DNG RAW signal which the Inferno is able to record, and also the ProRes RAW. Now the Panasonic EVA1 has a 5.7K sensor, so you can actually record 5.7K ProRes RAW onto the Inferno. With ProRes RAW being quite a new codec and such a great advancement in the sense that it's a lot lighter as a RAW codec, you can record a lot more than you would be doing in Cinema DNG at even higher resolutions. And that also brings to play the other main strength of the EVA1, which is that 5.7K sensor. Even recording at 4K, it's taking a 5.7K recording and compressing it down to a 4K signal, as opposed to recording just 4K off a 4K signal. So that 4K you're recording with the EVA is, in theory, even better than just normal 4K. Now, the Shogun Inferno is able to record all of the outputs from the EVA1 with a lot of flexibility, and it just makes being able to choose what you shoot and being able to have a little bit of ability to choose that maybe if you know you're going to be shooting more on a dive, maybe don't shoot Cinema DNG because you have less space on the card. You can shoot ProRes HQ or you can shoot ProRes RAW. It's brilliant to have that level of flexibility. So in order for me to shoot underwater, I wouldn't pair the EVA1 with anything other than the Shogun Inferno. You have the SDI input, you have the HDMI input. I chose to go with SDI input for underwater, but topside you can choose between both, and it records up to 240 frames a second at 2K, 60 frames a second at 4K, and I would not be without it. It's absolutely fantastic. In regards to the housing that I use, that's also another main reason as to why I chose the EVA1. The main body for the camera and the housing for the Atomus Shogun Inferno are both Nauticam, and they are currently the only manufacturer in the market that's making a housing for the EVA1, and I'm very, very particular about what I put my camera and my kit in. I won't put it in anything that I don't think that I can rely on 100%. And Nauticam have got a real reputation for making really well built, very solid, incredibly robust and reliable housings, and this housing is absolutely no different. They've managed to engineer it so you have access to all the manual controls on the main body and most of the controls on the Inferno for that housing as well, which means that underwater I can switch and change between various shooting modes if I want to, which is really comes in handy. And it's quite heavy when you have everything all in, but underwater it's slightly negatively buoyant, which I do quite like. But it also has a feature which is, I think actually it's quite underrated, and it's the vacuum pump system. So here at the rear of the housing and at the top of this housing, you can actually pump air into it to get rid of any kind of extra space where you might find water leaking in, and you get a green light on the back of the main housing, green light on the top of the Inferno housing, and you know that if that stays green for about 20 minutes, your housing is fully sealed and you are hopefully not going to experience any leaks. I used Nauticam housings on my previous setup, and I'm using Nauticams on this setup, and I can't see myself ever switching to anything else in the future. Really well made. They're not cheap, but they are more affordable than other housings for other cameras, and it's just a really solid setup which I know I can rely on, and I wouldn't put the EVA in anything else.